Hello and welcome to The Pickle, brought to you by AC4SA, academic coaching for student athletes, and co-hosted by Ethan O'Day and Jack Sundberg. Here on The Pickle, we discuss with our guests, ranging from coaches to professional athletes, the pickle of all things: academics, sports, recruiting, high school to the pros, you name it, we talk about it. Our goal for the podcast is to give people insight into the sports world and student athletes' perspectives by sharing current and former athletes, educators, and coaches' real-life experiences. Telling story is one of the most powerful means for leaders to influence, teach, and inspire. These stories resonate in our culture, history, and lesson learned. The Pickle brings you these stories of adversity, triumph, failure, and determination to get inspired, to take them to your school, home, life, and court. Listen, learn, share, and enjoy. Today's guest is Brandon Shintani. Brandon is a sophomore at Ridgewood High School in New Jersey. He is the founder and leader of Mind Design Sports, a sports psychology organization that provides tips and advice for younger student athletes. Brandon started Mind Design Sports by combining his interests in sports and psychology to help athletes perform at the highest level through the use of blogs, podcasts, guest speakers, and social media posts. Mind Design Sports is fully operated by high school and college students, most of whom are athletes. They provide the peer-to-peer perspective. They realize that not everyone can afford to hire a sports psychologist, so they provide these free resources for anyone in the sports world. Welcome to The Pickle.
The Pickle Pod. We're back and we're better. Really excited for our guest today. A little bit different than usual. We have a high school student, Brandon Shintani, out of Ridgewood High School in New Jersey, founder and leader of the Mind Design Sports organization. Really cool organization that does podcasts, blog posts, talking about student athletes' experiences, really focusing on the mental health aspect of student athletes. Really excited to dive in and find more about what they do and talk to our guests here about that. Brandon, welcome to the show. Thanks for coming on.
Thanks, Jack and Ethan, for having me on, man. Let's have a good conversation.
Awesome. I'm super excited to have you on, Brandon. I think Mind Design Sports, I think you guys are doing some really cool stuff. I think it's always important to look on the other side. You know, obviously we're always lifting weights and trying to get stronger and run faster, but, you know, to look on the side of mental toughness and, you know, how do we train our brain to prepare for times like that, I think is really cool. So I'm excited. And as of all of our guests, I know Brandon's listened to a couple of the Pickle Pods. We always kick it off with the rundown, which is 5 rapid fire questions, just so everyone can get to know Brandon a little bit better. Ethan, take them away.
All right, here we go. Question 1, dinner with one athlete.
This one's tough for me, but I have to go with Shaquille O'Neal. There's a lot of reasons for that one. Yeah. So one, he's super funny, and you know, you guys, he has a Shaq Been a Fool. I love to watch that. So that just gives me some laughs sometimes. So I talked to him with that at dinner probably. And he also is an NBA commentator. So I love the NBA and basketball. So I could talk to him about that. And lastly, he runs his own podcast. So that'd be pretty cool to talk about. So those 3 things would probably be my main reasons for going out with Shaq.
The Big Diesel. I love that. Yeah. He's most dominant big of all time, in my opinion. That'd be a good guess. Number 2 question here. Your number 1 thing on the bucket list.
Number 1 thing on the bucket list is to get Mind Design Sports out there and all athletes, younger athletes, to really know about it. So I'm thinking big time, big impact. So, you know, how every athlete knows about Nike and Under Armour. That's the audience and reach we're trying to get there, because sports psychology is important, like Jack said, and everyone's got to know it to really be at that top level. If you want to play at college or even varsity sports at high school, you got to train your mind to be at that optimal level of performance.
Yeah, that's amazing. You're off to a great start with that. And let's go to question number 3. Favorite movie of all time.
Favorite movie of all time would be something funny. So Get Hard by Kevin Hart and Will Ferrell. So I like that because I watched it a long time ago actually, but I don't really remember a lot. But I just remember it being hilarious. And for example, like I don't know if you guys watched it, but
Oh, I've seen it.
Will Ferrell's character was like trash talking, and Kevin Hart was trying to give him advice, and they were just cursing and doing dumb jokes, and it was just hilarious to me. So yeah, I don't really watch movies too much, but when I try to wind down, something good to have like lighthearted.
Love
For
that.
sure.
How do you start your day every morning?
Yeah, I actually have two answers for this one actually, because I want to get something more deeper and better for the audience. So the more plain answer and more like not exciting answer would be like waking up, changing my clothes, making my bed, brushing my teeth. And that would probably take like 15 minutes, 10 minutes. But the more deeper answer that I like to share just be like I start my day in the morning, the day before. So what that means basically is like I try to get my clothes ready beforehand. So I like put it right by my bed. So when I wake up, take the clothes right there, get out. So I just kind of optimize my time and enhance because I'm super tired in the morning. I'm not trying to like waste time by picking out my clothes and seeing, oh, do I like
Right.
this or this? And yeah, I try to get my work done all as much work the day before as possible so I don't get too stressed in the morning when I'm super tired because I know myself, I'm grumpy in the morning and I get pissed when little things come up. So I gotta maximize my performance the day before, the night before.
Yeah,
Love
that's
that.
smart. Setting your day up for success, getting that stuff done the
Yep.
night before. And final question here for the rapid fire question: favorite quote?
Yeah, I got a lot of quotes that I love, and we actually on My Design Sports we have like a monthly quote on our website. But one of my favorite ones would be like "sweat off the stress." I'm not sure who said that specifically, but I just like that quote. It's pretty short, comprehensive, and it just kind of shows that like if you're stressed out, just go exercise or go sweat it out. And I understand like how important exercise is to everyone's life. It kind of provides physical needs, being healthy, and it also provides that good mental health. And yeah, that'd be my favorite quote.
Awesome.
That's the rundown. I love the insight in all those questions. Usually, a
Yeah,
lot of the
definitely.
athletes only give quick ones, but I like you giving all the insight there. So how we're gonna go here, and I'll let Jack take this away in a second. Is you kind of did some research with throughout your connections and high school connections, and me and Jack are so far away from high school now. You're able to get these insights from high school students and the topics that they want to discuss on a show like this. So you did this research. How was that process before we even get started on that, getting this information from student athletes?
Yeah, I got a lot of members on my My Design Sports team, so I literally just gave everyone a quick group chat, and everyone just like named some concerns they had and what they thought would be good topics if they wanted to hear on a podcast. And honestly, it wasn't that bad. Everyone on my team is super nice and helpful, and they're all into sports, so I guess it kind of came off pretty quickly for them, and it just kind of rang them a bell. So yeah.
Awesome. Awesome. No, I think that's such a big uh important topic, is especially, we have a lot of athletes on and teachers and coaches, but it's really nice to actually hear from high school student athletes of what they want to know about, because I can talk about what I wanted to know about when I was a high school student athlete, but again, I'm removed by a couple of years, I think. So it's going to be interesting to see, your point of view as a high schooler now and our point of view as, professionals and, and just post-college guys. So we'll go through sort of three different topics here that Brandon has gone for us. We'll go through the academic side, the athletics, and then socially. And these, again, are all topics that high school student athletes thought, were relevant questions to what they're going through now. So we'll just dive right in. So the first one is managing time as a student and an athlete. How do you succeed in both? I'll sort of hit with this one off right away. I think every person that we've had on the podcast, and Ethan, I'm sure you can attest to this, is every person literally, I think, has said time management. So managing time as a student and athlete, how do you succeed in both? And Ethan, I'm sure you can attest to this. Every person that we've had on the podcast has said time management, how important it is to lay out their schedule. So before the season starts or before the year starts, they know every day that they're going to have games. They know every day that they're going to have practice, what time lift is going to be, what time their class schedule is going to be. So how does you succeed in both? I think time management is key, because if you're clustered looking for different things to do at different times, all of a sudden you're going to have an exam pop up at the end of the semester and you're going to be like, oh my gosh, this is happening now. Or you're going to show up late to the 6 a.m. lift because you forgot it was there. So I think being able to manage your time is important. Brandon, what do you think as far as currently as a high school student athlete, why it's so important for time management, especially for kids in high school even?
Yeah, this was the one topic that I think like the majority of my team members brought up. I think it was just like repeated like 5 or 6 times. So yeah, this is definitely one of the most important ones. And yeah, managing time is tough. Like you can't do everything. You want to do everything in high school. You want to play sports, want to have a social life, want to get good grades, but it's tough to do all three or even more. So I think, like you said, managing time is important, and asking yourself if the activity you're doing is going to have a high turnout and significant results, or if it's something just extra. Like, do you really need it to do this activity if you want to get that goal of yours? Whatever your goal is, you got to just evaluate and first prioritize. What do you want to do in your life? What do you want once you graduate in senior year? What do you want to accomplish? And all your activities should be built around that. If you want to get a D1 scholarship, you should probably put academics and sports on the priority, probably the top two, and your health. And yeah, even if you just one more thing, like one more advice would be like, if you do that and you still feel like you don't have enough time and you're just, I don't know, not getting enough sleep because of that, just for 2 weeks, write down like what you're doing every hour. So like get a piece of paper and like, for example, like from 7 a.m. to 8 a.m., you'd be like getting ready for school. And then you just keep doing that the whole day. And you just kind of see like after 2 weeks, like pick out the activities that aren't really doing much for you and then just cut them out. And then after that 2 weeks, I'm sure you'll find that you're being more productive and doing stuff that you really want to do. And that is having that high turnout.
Yeah, that's
Definitely.
great advice. Yeah, and I think the biggest difference between college and high school, you're obviously in class from 8 a.m. till 3 p.m. You're in the school doing schoolwork or free block. You're in that school and it's all structured that entire time. College, you've got classes at weird different times throughout the day. You got to run to different buildings, going around. You got to take those count those little times of transportation, even on these bigger campuses going around. It's a little bit different than high school when you're in the same building. And yeah, just scheduling exactly what Brandon said too, making sure you schedule time for yourself. You're taking care of yourself. That's really important in college because you have so much more freedom and you're on your own. So yeah, those are all important things and differences. The high school athletes from college, you kind of make that jump.
Yeah, I think so for sure. And I think that actually segues perfectly into the next sort of topic that Brandon and his team have gone for us. It's, day in the life as a college athlete, versus a high school athlete. What does free time look like? And a lot of the guests that we have had on, and for me and Ethan's experience, when you go on recruiting visits and you talk to people about college, you never really get the full look of like what a day looks like. And so just sort of a typical day as a student athlete would be, especially as a freshman when you first come in, because there's a lot of mandated stuff because you're a freshman, because they don't want you to slip up. So let's say if it's an off season, you're waking up, let's say you have 6 a.m. lift, and then you have 6 a.m. lift. So 6 a.m. to 7:30, you have lift. Then after that, maybe you have class from 8 to 12 or 8 to 1. And then you have practice scheduled from, 2 to 6. And 2 to 6 is there's early work, there's extra work, there's optional work. You're not mandated to go, but it's probably a good idea that you want to go if you want to be in the starting lineup. So then you have practice after that. It ends at 6. Then after 6, grab a quick bite to eat. And then after 6, because you're a freshman, you have mandated study hall. So you could be gone from study hall from 7 to 9, from 6 to 8. And then after that, you're pretty much shot by the end of the day. And then you're pretty much cashing it in, getting some rest, and you're getting back up and doing it again. So again, it's Ethan said this early on another podcast, and one of our guys, Darnell Davis from Rutgers football, he talked about how the more disciplined you're with your time, the more free time you'll have, because you'll know exactly when you have stuff to do. So from 6 to 7, I'll have an hour to myself there. that, you know, maybe I just want to chill. Maybe I want to play video games. Maybe I want to call my mom, whatever it is. But the more disciplined with your time, the more free time you're going to have. So I think that's the biggest thing about high school versus student, or high school versus college student athlete, is that college, like, your days are packed. Like, there's no like going home and like shutting it down. Like, you're on campus 24/7, and you know, there's always a class to be at, study hall to be at. You know, not saying that there's not free time, because you'll have your free time. You know, it just depends when it is, and are you in season, are you out of season? So, and I'm sure, Brandon, you can talk a little bit about just being in high school. You guys, I mean, at least when I was in high school, you know, you go to school, then you have practice afterwards, and then you pretty much have your day to do as you please. Is that pretty much right, I guess?
Yeah, like you guys said, it'd be like 7:45 to like 3-ish is school. And probably in between that, you probably have like lunch and a free period so you can get your homework done in that, maybe like an hour in that time. And yeah, from 3 to like 5:30-ish would be like practice, or maybe if you have a game, it's gonna be from 3 to 7. It's gonna be really long and probably not gonna get home until like 7:30, 8-ish. And then
Mm-hmm.
yeah, from there, I know a lot of my boys and on the basketball team, they are super busy all the time. They got I mean, all the sports at our school has practice from every day of the week except for Sunday. So they're super busy. It's always like 2 hours per day, and it's really like a commitment. And yeah, after like 7 o'clock, most of my friends just do homework. They don't really have time to relax anymore. And even if
Yeah.
they probably just do for like 30 minutes, 1 hour.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and I think the second part of that topic there was, what does your free time really look like? And it's definitely what I remember: dining hall, meals with the team late in the day. That's pretty much that's the free
Yeah.
time that you look forward to, having a meal with your
Yeah.
friends, your teammates. That's stuff that you look for at the end of the day after you did your work, late night meal or something with your team. That's really what it looks like. Or it might be like a little study session that's kind of like free time, where you're just like, maybe you're in study hall and you finish work and you're talking to teammates. That's kind of like what it works like, what it looks like. And then big thing in college is when you're a college athlete, you have your days off, and those days off, you have your free time, and you got to get work done still. But that's kind of like what it looks like in a season schedule. And here, I'll help us segue into the next one right here. Do you have to build your school schedule around your sports schedule? Jack, why don't you start talking about that? We were talking about this. We saw this one before, and we're talking about how this was a good one.
Yeah, I think this was a great one, because I had no idea about that. You know, okay, I have a class at 3 o'clock. You know, I want to sign up for it because the professor looks good. But if you're playing a sport in college, usually your schedule for practice is laid out prior. So they tell you you cannot sign up for a class from 1 to 6 p.m. So then all your classes either have to be from 8 to 12, or if you want to take class after 6 p.m., which a lot of guys don't want to, you can. And usually, if it is a class that you're going to schedule during that practice period, you'll have to go to your coach. You'll have to go to your academic advisor and say, "Hey, I really want to take this class." And, you know, sometimes coaches are very accepting. You know, my coaches were, but I've heard plenty of guys who said, you know, I couldn't take a class because it was during practice time. And then at the same time, you don't want to take a class during practice time because you don't want to fall behind of what's going on in the field. You know, if your buddy's out there and he's getting to get more time in front of the coaches, shooting, practicing, you know, that's time that you're missing out on. You know, and all schools are different. You know, I had my sister, she played basketball in college, and she wanted to be an engineering major, and the coach pretty much told her, you got to choose. You got to be an engineering major. You got to be a basketball player. So every school differs, you know, every coach differs, but a lot of the times you're going to have to schedule your class around your athletics, which is kind of crazy to think about. So I thought this was a great question. Ethan did as well.
Yeah. And I think a big thing is, at least this was my experience with it. The seniors that need classes to graduate, like they have to take classes during that time, that kind of dictates what your practice schedule is going to look like. Because if those classes are only, like, they have to take those classes to graduate, right? So they'll work around that. So you're almost work it around their schedule, because seniors need to take the classes they need to graduate, obviously. And it's tough for academic advisors, but sometimes what can happen with your major too is classes that you usually take your freshman year with your major will pile up into your summer or your next semester, just the way that the practice schedule works. So it can be tough, and you have to navigate that through your coaches, really try to have those tough conversations with coaches and academic advisors. But to answer the question, yeah, it's mainly you choosing your schedule with your academic advisor around practice and game time. And you miss a lot of class due to games as well too. Jack can talk about that.
And I think this is a cool one, Brandon, too, that you guys brought up, because I think that if you're really going to play like a big three sport, and even if you're not, if you're going to play baseball, basketball, or football, or even track and field, it doesn't really matter. I mean, I think that all student athletes should be prepared to take a winter course, to take a summer course, because it takes a huge load off you as far as how many classes you're taking during a season, because it can be overwhelming when you're hopping on a plane every Thursday and you're getting back Monday morning at 3 a.m. So to be prepared already going in, saying, okay, I'm going to take summer classes my freshman year, I'm going to take winter classes my sophomore year, to be prepared. Because when I had to take winter classes and summer classes, it was like a shock to me. I was like, oh, this is a lot. I can't do this. But if I had known prior, I would have came prepared to be like, okay, you know what? I'm going to take summer session one year, and it's going to help me a lot. Rather than all of a sudden my academic advisor saying like, hey, Jack, we gotta take a summer class if you want to graduate on time, because then it's like, I don't want to be coming back here, during my professional season in the off season to take classes. I want to get this done with, as soon as I can. So I think this was a great one, Brendan. From your experience, why do you because obviously in high school, you have your class like we talked about, and then after that you have your sports. So it's definitely different. Why do you think it's so important for high school student athletes to know this, Brandon, as far as like, sports and scheduling and stuff like that?
Yeah, just the biggest difference I think between college sports and high school sports would be that it's already built in for you, like your schedule. Like they schedule the practices and games after school. They know that there's no more classes then, so you don't have to really worry about like, oh, meeting with your academic advisor, picking X class instead of Y class. So I think that's the benefit, first of all, for high school athletes. But I actually would say that for high school athletes, you should probably build your sports schedule around school, meaning that like school comes first, because a lot of athletes aren't really freakish athletes. Like you're not LeBron James probably, and you're not the next Kobe Bryant. So having those good grades and like having that strong foundation is just going to set you up for success. Like maybe if a college recruiter comes by and he sees that you have good grades and you're a pretty good athlete, it's only going to put you higher on the stool to like get those recruiters to come see you. And yeah, that's what I would say.
Yeah, no, I think that's good. I think that's great. And I think that, we were talking to a student athlete last week at AC4SA. Don't let grades keep you out of school. Let athletics keep you out of school. If you're not good enough to go play there, so be it. We'll find another place to play. But don't let grades hold you out from going to a school, which I think is really important for people to hear. It's like, make them turn you down because of athletics, not because of academics. Because athletics, we can live with that. There's plenty of places we can go play. But if we can't get in because of grades, it's not going to be a good thing.
And also like having good grades, I think it shows like more skills and like potential in you, because you got to commit to school. And so that kind of shows that your dedication. So that's going to probably translate on the court or the field. And it also shows that you're likely to think effective on the sports field or pitch or on the court, because I think there's a positive connection between athletic ability and getting those good grades. And also like it'll just set you up for jobs. So like employers will see that you have good grades in the future. So it's only gonna be positive and you're just gonna learn how to time manage better. And it's just a lot more benefits coming with, I guess, juggling the two of them.
Yeah, no. And that actually, our next topic was athletics right after academics. And one of your guys' first topics of interest was, what's a good way to get attention to play sports in college, sort of like recruiting. And I think academics is a big one. We talk about this all the time on the Pickle Pod, is when a coach recruits you, because if you're good enough, you're good enough. You can go play there. The first thing he's going to ask is for your transcript. What do your grades look like? what's your core GPA? And if they pick that sheet up and they see a 3.7, automatically they're like, okay, this guy's getting it done in the classroom. He's on top of his stuff. This is someone who we want to look at. If you have a 2.8, they're like, I don't know. And again, unless you're a LeBron James or a Devin Booker, and even then still, they don't want to bring in a guy who's going to be a nuisance, in the classroom. They want someone who's going to be eligible to play, not on academic probation. So I think that's a great way, to get attention, because that's literally the first thing they're going to ask for. Every time I got recruited, hey, Jack, send over your transcript. All the guys who I've talked to, Ethan, hey, send over your transcript. It's the first thing coaches ask for. So I think that's a huge part about getting recruited, that it gets looked, over because they just want to have a good highlight tape. Everyone's got good highlight tapes, dude. Everyone can dunk. Everyone can hit a home run, throw them 90 miles an hour, whatever it is. So I think that is super important. Ethan, what do you got on that?
Yeah, the recruiting process through high school is a weird thing. Like sometimes you really do have to try to put yourself out there to get to show your talent, depending on where you're coming from. If you're don't get that same exposure in other areas from an athletic standpoint, like obviously you just touched on the athletic part. You're not even going to have an opportunity to do that if you don't have the athletics. But if you got to get shown, especially in basketball, like AAU is obviously a big thing. But the fact of the matter is, if you're good enough, you're going to eventually get found, which I think is a big thing. But you got to advocate for yourself as well. We talked to a lot of people like come from JUCO, done post-grad years, things like that, like doing the work to set yourself up for success, to get in front of the coaches that you want to get in front of, and even like reaching out and sending your clip. Like if you're not getting,
you got to do it.
You got to shoot your shot, and I've seen that work too. So the little things like that, because I get it. Sometimes people come from situations where maybe their coach really isn't advocating for them, and they really believe in themselves and think they can play a college sport. So do the work yourself and reach out. I think it's advice that we've given to some throughout our podcast.
Yeah, and I think to touch on that too, I think a little bit more is, I think that a lot of, Brandon, I'm sure you can attest to this as well, is the recruiting process is going to be stressful. Like it, and if we could tell student athletes one thing, and I think if all of our guests who have been on the Pickle Pod could tell student athletes, it's just get ready, because it's going to be stressful, and just understand that it's going to be hard work. Because I think a lot of times guys get blindsided. They think it's going to be this sort of seamless process, and it's usually not. And just be prepared that you're not always going to get accepted to your number one school. You're not always going to get accepted to the number two school. And maybe that's not the best fit for you. Maybe down the road, the number 4 school maybe is going to be the best fit for you. But I see so many student athletes and just regular students get really built up about they got to get into this school, and then they don't. And it's like a huge letdown. And I think just understanding that it's going to be tough, and it's not always going to go your way. And just, it's similar to sports. You're not always going to win. You're not always going to win the state championship, and just be able to be resilient, because oftentimes, you're going to send an email and maybe you're not going to get a response. And then you're going to be like broken down. You'll be like, what? I'm good enough to go play there, And I'm sure, Brandon, as far as you being a high schooler, talk a little bit about just student athletes and just regular students get really built up as far as the recruiting process, and they want to go to a Northwestern, and maybe they don't get in. And then all of a sudden it's like, they don't even know where to go next.
Yeah, it's stressful, and there's like a lot of competition. There's like thousands of athletes, and you're competing with everyone around you, around your county, around your town, even your teammates on the team. Like, you're basically competing with them, even though they're your teammates. I mean, I think the bottom line, like Ethan said, just to play well and get those grades up, and yeah, it'll just come to you. I don't think, if you just enjoy the process and if you just play out there, it's going to translate on the field or the court, and you don't have to really worry about it. And I'm not really an expert on this, so I think that's just what I would say.
Yeah, it's great that you're kind of, with your work that you've done through your foundation, you've kind of seen, and obviously being a high school student, you can kind of give us the point of view of these high school students, of what you're seeing now. So I think that's what's so great. Let's moving down here. Biggest difference between college and high school athletics. I can just kind of give my one thing, and then Jack can give his, I guess. My biggest thing was the attention to detail with your athletics, as far as like your coaching staff, for every scout and film and all that little attention to detail, going from game to game, the amount of work, you have a full staff of coaches that are getting paid to win games. So they're doing all of this research on film to make you a better player, doing little breakdowns of things like that. In basketball, you're scouting other teams and doing so much work. There's so much effort that goes into every game, the coaching staff and attention to detail. Like, you really have to focus and use your mind on scouts to have the exact game plan in place in basketball. And that goes down the line for every sport in college. So I think a lot of high school athletes don't necessarily know about that. And how about you, Jack? Something different maybe?
No, I would say pretty much the same thing. I think in high school, it's not necessarily sort of a job. I think a lot of times in college athletics, no, it's all the time. Coaches are trying to win. It's the best players play. It's if you're a freshman, you're a senior. Sometimes in high school, we're going to have this senior on the team because it's varsity. He's been working his butt off. And I'm not saying that's not always not the case in college, if a senior's been working hard or whatever, but these guys are here to win. It's their job as a program at the university to put out a winning record, because that looks good on the university. It looks good for them. And, they have to go home and, tell their wives and their husbands that, I still have a job because we had a winning record. So I think a lot of the times, like Ethan's saying, it's these guys are doing whatever it takes to win, whether you're a freshman, a senior, a junior. It doesn't matter. They're going to do whatever it takes to put the best 5, the best 11, the best 9 on the field every time. But Brent, I'm sure you could talk a little bit about, just as far as in high school, it's different. I'm sure you see it all the time as far as, we're going to have a senior on varsity, or maybe he's a freshman. We'll leave him on JV this year. Do you guys see that a lot?
Oh yeah, 100%. The basketball team freshmen, they're not allowed to go to varsity, you're not even allowed to go to, actually, you're not allowed to go to JV. You're only allowed to be on freshman team. So yeah, they kind of have that like strict cutoff, but you get more freedom once you get into your sophomore, junior, and senior years. Yeah, definitely.
Yeah. No, and that's a perfect example as far as, you're a freshman, you're a senior in college, it doesn't matter, best players play, because they're going to do whatever it takes to win, whether, rather than high school, it's not less competitive, but it's just a different sort of outlook on the game. And so our next one for athletics was, just talking about COVID and just you guys are being impacted by it. There's so many guys who I still know who play college ball who are going to be impacted on for years to come. The draft, it's just different. And I think that, it really stinks because it's going to affect a lot of people. There's a lot of guys who I know who are freshmen this year who aren't even playing because they're seniors who came back because of COVID. So now spots that they might have been to fill, they're not playing because they're seniors who came back from COVID. So I think, it's going to be tough. And, but I think the people who are resilient and who stick with it, those are the people who are going to come out on top, because like the recruiting process, it's going to be stressful and there's going to be ups and downs, but if you can stay in the water and stay afloat, I think that you'll have success. Brandon, how have you seen it affect high school student athletes as far as COVID and Zoom and not being able to play and get in front of coaches and stuff like that?
Yeah, all the seasons were cut super short, especially for like basketball. I know they only had like not even half the amount of games they played this year. And also it actually affected how the rosters were made. So like usually the varsity coach takes more players, maybe like 20, but this year he only took like 15 or less, I think. So it kind of like cut the opportunity off for those JV players to move up and prove that they earned that spot. And I know a couple of my friends, they're pretty pissed off about that and upset. And also I think it's just like COVID, less games, so you have like less chance to adapt to the style of your team and the season itself. So it's harder to like play at your best and show the coach that you really should be on that starting spot. So I think those two would be probably the most impactful changes from COVID.
Yeah.
And I think the COVID stuff has been so hard for high schoolers because it's taken away their athletics to a certain degree. And you talk about this a lot in your organization, like the mental health of high schoolers and student athletes. Like that's the biggest advice we'd give. Mindfulness, taking care of themselves, and making sure that they have different routines that they learn through mental health education, whether it's talking to someone else who specializes in their field, educating themselves on ways to keep themselves prepared when when they're ready to play again, and just continue to immerse themselves in their sports, and just keep working hard, even though there might not be as many games and practices. So I think it's really important. So the last one here for athletics was kind of asking how does one not lose interest in a team sport when there's a lot of opponents and teammates that might be better than them. I think where the question is kind of at is like, how does one like not really get burnt out too with and overwhelmed when coming into a college experience where there's, you know, a bunch of other people on that team that's just as good, if not better than them. And I think we've talked about this a lot on the Pickle Pod, is just creating relationships with your teammates is really big. And then finding different things outside of your sport as well, to become passionate about, not getting super consumed and just doing your sport and academics every day. Find different things to do outside of sports. And you know, Jack can kind of talk to this as well too.
Yeah, no, I think the biggest thing is, you know, we had Deontay Burton on last week, and he's a cornerback for the Dallas Cowboys. And he talked about, you know, we asked him sort of a similar sort of question, you know, and his biggest thing was, you know, the reason I play this game is because I have fun doing it. And he's like, the moment I am not having fun doing it, I need to take a step back, because the reason we all play sports and we do, you know, we show up at 6 a.m. to do a lift, or we're shooting outside when it's dark out and it's 7 p.m. and we can barely see the hoop. You know, we do it because we have fun. And I think, you know, so often with the recruiting process and all this different stuff that's weighing on us, we want to go to college, we want to do all this different stuff, you know, want to, like Brandon, you were talking about the beginning about optimizing, finding goals, is all great stuff. But if we're not having fun doing it, then, you know, we're doing ourselves a disservice and the people around us, because when you're having fun playing a game, the people around you feel it. You know, they're like, wow, Brandon's having a great time out here playing. He's smiling every time he shows up to the court. You know, that's what makes it. That's why we play it. You know, that's why, you know, it's just so exhilarating. And, you know, that's why we watch SportsCenter, because it's fun. We don't watch it because it's work. We watch SportsCenter because we want to see LaMelo Ball, you know, hit a step back J from the logo, you know. It's fun. And I think, Brandon, talk a little bit about, you know, you see so many kids in high school, probably they play soccer from age 6 to, 18. And then by the time they're 18, they're like, I'm done with soccer. I can't do this anymore. It's just, I played this all year round for the past 12 years of my life. So Brandon, talk a little bit about how you see high schoolers, sort of lose interest and sort of lose that sort of fun for the game.
I think the main reason why a high schooler would lose like that passion for their sport would be because they're just getting outperformed, maybe by their teammates, by their opponents. They don't feel that like, oh, I'm better than them anymore. I'm just so much worse than that person. And when you're not good at something, why should you like it? So why you just want to quit and just not play anymore? And yeah, it's tough. And my best advice would be like, if you initially like that sport and you're really passionate about it, maybe like a month or two ago, just to find other channels to play, like maybe pick up games with your friends or a church league, and you can get to play and you keep your interest high and you can learn and practice on your skills. But also, like, I think you should just stick with the team that's giving you trouble, and it's really because that just pushes you. If you're playing with athletes that are better than you, you're only getting better. When you put yourself in those uncomfortable situations, that's good, because when you're uncomfortable, you're improving yourself. When you get
Definitely.
when you're playing with third graders, you're going to destroy them. So you would rather want to play with like D1 athletes that are a lot better than you, because you're only going to learn from them and you're only going to push yourself. So I would just say to stick with it and try to find that motivation to play again.
Yeah.
That's it.
Yeah.
And I think that question was really asking too about like being overwhelmed with like people competing for a spot. The
Yeah.
best athletes, enjoy that competition, and it brings out the best of everyone. So trying to enjoy that competition with someone else instead of being stressed about competing against one of your friends and teammates for a spot, enjoying that competition is really important. All good points. So the last section here, we went through academics, athletics, and socially. The transition from high school to college, what does that look like socially and mentally for a high school athlete making that transition into college? I'll go first here. Socially, it's obviously completely different because you're meeting all these new people, your teammates, and getting thrown into a college experience, which is the coolest thing about college, is you get to live with all these people your age and make some really cool new friends and get outside of the high school bubble. But when you're an athlete, you're gonna really be friends and around that team a lot. And we talked about this on the Pickle pod before too, is getting outside of that team and meeting other people in your classes and making connections, I think is really big and important for student athletes. So getting outside of that bubble and meeting new people is huge.
Yeah. And I think that, like we said before, Ethan, you just touched upon a little bit, is finding different things that interest you. You know, we're all not going to play sports forever at a competitive level. Sure, we might play a rec league when we're older or an over men's 40 league, but we're not all going to play forever. So find different things that are going to interest you, because college is, you know, there's so many activities and different groups you can get involved in that you can do, that you can find passion in other than sports. And at the same time, I think college is so different because you're really on your own. And it's, for a lot of people, you know, unless you went to boarding school, you're on your own for your first time in your life. So you have this whole plethora of, you can do whatever you want. And you see guys who excel in it because they can find different things that they want to do. But then you also see guys and gals who get lost in it because all of a sudden they have this free time. You know, if they don't want to go to class, they don't have to go to class. And I think that, you know, staying on top of your stuff and staying organized with your time and knowing when free time is and knowing when free time isn't, it helps you stay definitely on top of what you're doing. Because at the flip side, you know, I've seen plenty of guys who really, they don't necessarily know how to all of a sudden, you know, be on their own. And all of a sudden they're like, man, well, I can go out and party this weekend, you know, and sure, that's fine to do sometimes, but then there's other times that it's not okay to do that. Which I'm sure, Brandon, you can talk a little bit about. Just, you know, high schoolers, you know, you're always around your family, your parents, your friends, where in college, you're pretty much on your own.
Yeah. Yeah, I think what you guys both touched on, like getting to know more people, that's the best thing you could do for yourself. When you're a freshman, I know like a lot of high schools, they have that club fair. Like you could just go around, find those clubs that you want to join. And I joined a bunch of them as well. And I think it's just good to get your name out there and almost like kind of networking, like making some friends, maybe even some upperclassmen, because you can always ask an upperclassman for some advice. Maybe it's for classes, for sports, maybe a teacher. And yeah, when you put yourself out there, you're only going to do good for yourself. And even if you join those clubs and you like maybe commit to it for a couple months and you see you like it, it's only going to be better for you to not only do that, it's going to be, maybe you could do sports and that club. And it's just really good to just join and try out some stuff.
Yeah, definitely open your doors to new horizons, see what you like,
Yeah.
see what you don't like. Like if you do something for a month, maybe be like, hey, this isn't for me. So now we're going to sort of transition into Brandon's expertise and Mind Design Sports and what they do. So, you know, prior to this podcast, we'll give a whole intro of Mind Design Sports. So everyone will have a sort of a good idea of what you guys do. But they're big into sports psychology and the mental game on the other side. So Brandon, sort of as heading the podcast with Mind Design Sports, you know, learning from, you know, your guests and your fellow student athletes, you know, why do you see as Mind Design Sports, why sports psychology is so important in the game of sports?
Yeah, sports psychology is a growing field. There's more and more mental skill coaches nowadays, and many professional athletes are using it to help them understand why they don't play well, or how to deal with stress, and how to just be the best player and be consistent as possible. And that's just the goal of Minds on Sports, for like just to educate athletes about sports psychology and how we can use it to better yourself. And I just want to give like a quick example of like one of our podcast guests. We had an NBA trainer, Graham Betchert, and we just focused on COVID's effects. I know we talked about that before. And yeah, we just try to have these like professionals on our podcast that give insights into sports. And if they're just more qualified, they have more insights. And it just gives a different perspective for these young athletes that they don't really hear about. And that's our goal. And we just want to like show that if you don't really have sports psychology, it's going to be really tough for you to be at that top level. So yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. I think it's so cool that you guys are all high schoolers too doing this, because you guys are really like peers helping peers. You guys are really finding out what's troubling you guys, what you guys want to learn more about, and then going out there and finding experts, doctors, sports psychologists that are on top of their game. We've had, playing professionally in college, we have sports psychologists come talk to us all the time. And there's plenty of guys who say, oh, I don't need this. I don't need this. But if you take, 20% of your time that you might use in sports and put it to the mental side, it could go a long way. And I think, especially now with high school student athletes, there's so many different pressures. Like there's so much social media. It's always who's the best, who's putting out the best highlight film, who has more followers, who's getting more likes. It's just, there's so many different stress factors that are incorporated now into sports. And when you think about sports psychology, you think about like, okay, well, what am I going to do to beat so-and-so on the floor? But there's also these different stress factors that it can help you out. How do I block out all this? How do I learn to cope, with coaches calling me, coaches not calling me? And Ethan, I'm sure you can talk to that a little bit as far as just sports psychology and the importance of it.
Yeah, it's huge. And I wish I kind of got to really dive into it more in my college career. We had hired a member on the staff, a sports psychologist towards the end, who was amazing. And I still didn't quite understand it at the end of my college career. And then even through my pro career, my short pro career, I started to understand it a little bit more. But it's just so important now. And it's obviously really important to help you perform, right? It's gonna help you make your game that much better. If you're not putting in that time, you're getting worse at your sport, you could say. Like it's gonna affect you. But just for your well-being as a human being, like student athletes and pro athletes are very susceptible to having depression and other things, like getting so caught up in their sport and having all eyes on them all the time. It's really a weird place to be in, especially like in college, playing a sport when other athlete or other students are doing different things. So it's so important just for your well-being to learn these techniques to take care of yourself, and recognize these negative thoughts and emotions, and how to deal with them. So I think what you're doing is spot on. What high school athletes need to be doing right now is worrying about taking care of themselves, especially with COVID. You're seeing these statistics right now of college athletes. Like, I really feel for these guys and girls. It's just a tough time playing with no fans and missing games and having to get tested all the time, and high school athletes too. It's really awesome what you're doing. So yeah, and you read these blog posts too. They're from the peers, like Jack was saying before. Great to hear stories from fellow high schoolers. So yeah, this is all really important stuff.
Yeah,
Yeah.
sports psychology is like, it's really not only for sports, it's for life. The tips and the techniques that sports psychology gives can be applicable to any stressful situation, any traumatic experience. Like basically, if you have trauma, it's almost like the same as having a big maybe knee injury. You need surgery, you can't play for a long time. Maybe if you're super stressed for the championship game, it's almost like preparing for a big test like the SAT. Like you gotta use breathing techniques to calm yourself down before the test. You gotta visualize yourself getting that good score. And that's the same thing as visualizing yourself getting, I don't know, 20 points on the field, on the court. And like almost sports psychology is just giving life psychology tips and techniques.
Mhm.
Yeah. Yeah. I think so for sure. And I think that it's so often looked beyond, because a guy who's a stud, or you think you're that good, you're like, I don't need this. This is for softies. But really you're only making yourself better. If someone came in and a sports psychologist said, listen, you need to do this because it's going to make you that much better. there'd be hundreds of guys who'd sign up because I want to do whatever it takes to be the best. And you see guys like Kobe Bryant, and you see NBA players and NFL and MLB guys do this all the time, but they don't realize it later in their career because they're at a certain line where everybody's that good. What can I do to be that much better than somebody else? And this oftentimes gives people an advantage. But I think, Brandon, it's cool that you also said it. It's just about life. It's just about finding different ways that you can adapt to stressful situations, finding ways that you can know, not to get too high when something great happens and not to get too low when something bad happens. And I think the big thing at the Pickle Pod is we don't necessarily dive into sports psychology too much because, like you said, there's so many experts out there, and we don't want to take that shine away from them because these guys are experts in what they do. And what we're experts in is, doing the journey, and we've been through it, and we're either still currently playing or we haven't played. So to give sort of our insight on that, I think is what the Pickle Pod does great. And what Mind Design Sports is, you guys bring in experts all the time who talk about this, because they're really educated on this topic. And Brendan, talk a little bit about why it's so important for younger athletes, especially to work on their mental game.
Yeah. I never had this resource, Mind Design Sports, or something like the Pickle Pod when I was playing at a young age. I never really even knew what sports psychology meant. Like, what is psychology? If you probably ask a middle schooler, they probably have no idea what that means, or they don't know how to spell it. So, yeah, I mean, it was tough to feel the stress and pressure that I experienced when I was younger, maybe after a bad game, and I just kind of pushed it off, hope for the best for the next game. I was really hoping that I didn't mess up again, but I didn't have like a way to like solve the problem. There was no sports psychology resource for me, a blog or a podcast to like, oh, you can do this to solve that problem specifically. So that's why, like with My Design Sports, we just try to target that younger audience to tackle these problems, and the like very prominent ones like stress. And usually these younger athletes don't really have the money to afford a mental skills coach until you really get to that D1, that NBA level. So I think this free resource is pretty helpful, and it just allows them to educate themselves. And if they're really into it, they're going to read every single blog post, they're going to listen to every podcast. So it's really just right there for them on the table. And they just need to understand that if you use it, it's a process and it's going to only get better from there.
Yeah, that's such good advice. And last question here, why you kind of touched on it a bit there, but why did you decide to have these questions through Mind Design? Like, how were you able why has it been so important for you to help your peers, is the question that I wanted to get out to you there. Why has that resonated with you so much, like through your high school experience?
Yeah, like I said, when I was younger, it was tough to like push through those roadblocks. There's nothing there. I thought breathing techniques, visualization, like what is that? That's a joke. Like, why would breathing help you? Like, it's just breathing, right? Everyone breathes. So there was not that realization for me until I really got into psychology, and I like learned about sports psychology, watched TED Talks about it, read some blogs. So I hope that answers the question. And I think just sports are super important in general because provides that physical need, that mental need. It helps you take time off from homework and the stress you have in your life. Just go out there, have fun, and talk to your teammates, talk to a coach. And you just learn a bunch of valuable lessons. You kind of have a growth mindset because when you keep getting older, the competition keeps getting harder. So you got to like really target your problems to get better and to move on to the next level if you want to play at that level, or you're just going to get cut off and you're not going to be able to play. So sports are just important, and anybody that's out there playing, you're doing yourself a good favor.
Yeah. And that was actually sort of our last question for you, Brandon, is why are sports so important? And I think that, we've talked to a lot of high school coaches just through the Pickle Pod and what we're doing. And I think that they see a lot of people, aren't playing as many sports as they used to. There's some schools we've talked to that they don't even have a freshman team anymore, or they can barely field a JV team. And you might not know you're doing yourself a service at the time by just showing up and playing a sport. But by just showing up and playing a sport and learning how to work with teammates, learning what it means to lose, learning what it means to win, and putting in hard work, that goes a long way. And you're not going to know necessarily at the moment it's going to affect you. But then all of a sudden, you're going to be in college and be like, okay, well, I remember that time I get cut from the JV team. I can bounce back from this because I've seen worse than this. Okay, I failed a test. Well, shoot, I made the losing turnover in our state championship game. I can rebound from this. So I think for all of your guests who are, avid listeners of Mind Design Sports, I think it's going to be cool for them to see, maybe I should play sports, or maybe I should continue playing sports. Maybe if I only play through high school, I don't have to go play, even if I don't go play in college, it's going to do, wonders for you, when you're done playing sports, because it's going to translate, off the court or off the diamond. But I think that's really cool. And Ethan, you can sort of touch upon about, why sports are so important for younger athletes, especially.
Yeah, and we've talked about this is just the camaraderie you get with your teammates. There's really nothing like it. I think in these team sports, you learn so many life lessons, and just playing a sport when you really love something, like a lot of people that they never experience something like that, like such a passion for that sport, and it really sticks with you for the rest of your life when you have that love for that one sport. Like even what you feel in high school about something, like you'll be doing that the rest of your life. But either if you have a collegiate career, if you're playing intramural basketball or baseball or whatever it is, like softball league, like if you really love that sport, like for whatever reason, it seems to just click with people who are into sports. They get so immersed into one thing, and it's a special part of their lives that gives them a release from different things that helps them deal with stress and stuff. So I think those two reasons are so important. But yeah, Brandon, thank you for coming on the show, man. It was this was a lot of good stuff we talked about, and the work you're doing with Mind Design, I think it's spot on what high school athletes need with that sports psychology stuff. It's such a big thing. I've seen the shift with colleges putting the money into departments and pro teams too. So it's good that you're talking to high school athletes. So thanks for coming on.
Yeah, 100%. Thanks for having me on, guys. And I think, yeah, this episode had a lot of good stuff in it. So I'd probably want everyone to watch a lot of it and try to like actually implement some stuff we talked about into your life and try to take something out of it and put it into your daily life so you can see the results.
Yeah, no, I think so for sure. I think that this is a cool combination as far as what I talked about, or I touched upon a little bit earlier. The Pickle Pod is all about people who have been through the journey or are still currently in the journey of their sports career. And I think that we give sort of our expertise on the things that we have learned through our process. And I think that you guys at Mind Design Sports do a great job of talking about, different tactics in sports psychology and bringing experts who are really, educated on certain topics that can help, not only, learning from Pickle Pod and our experience, but you guys have people in who are going to give you specific tactics and different things, and guys like Graham Betchart who are going to be awesome on. So Brandon, I appreciate it. I hope the entire high school athlete world listens to this podcast because this is good stuff. And Brandon, I mean, absolutely unbelievable. You're out here high school. You're 16, right?
Yeah, I just turned 16 2 months ago.
Yeah, come on. This guy's 16. He's having a conversation with a couple of grown men. This is unbelievable. You're doing an unbelievable job. And I think what you're doing was super cool. And I mean, there's no way that you guys as high schoolers are writing those blog posts. There's no way. They're way too good. They're way too good. So Brandon, I appreciate you coming on, and we'll put this out there and hopefully we get a lot of listens.
Yeah. Thanks again.
Thanks for tuning in to The Pickle, who is brought to you by AC4SA, academic coaching for student athletes, whose goal is to use the power of sport to unleash the athlete's potential in the academic arena.